Okay, take two. I did start my live and it's completely dropped off, so let's take two. All right, I'm just going to get myself sorted. I apologize, just let me get this sorted. I want to make sure that it's actually going live this time. Let's see, where is it? There it is. Yes, there it is. Sorry, thank you, we're live. All right, thank you. Welcome to the first in my series of lives each week. Thursday 9:30 is the normal time when things don't drop out and fail on me. But you know what? It's life. Let's keep rolling with the punches. We are all so much more adaptable nowadays. So welcome. All right. Today we're going to talk about leadership training. Leadership training is, a pretty essential training, and it does have a lot of tips. And we will go through a little bit of that to create our high-performing teams. But what I want to do today is get back to basics. Now, I have worked in multi-million-dollar businesses. I have been senior executive to IC, to the CEO, and or CEOs. I have operations, management, finance, and HR and general operations experience. So where I'm coming from is from a place of years of experience in learning what works in business. I have a passion for HR and people because in my experience over the last couple of decades in senior management roles, I have, and my own businesses. I've had two businesses now. This is my third. I've successfully passed all businesses on and sold them at varying times. So this is my third business. I do have experience in teams. I haven't just run on my own solo for quite some time, but I have extensive experience in this, working in big business, manufacturing, service-based business, and as a consultant going in and consulting to other businesses on this. The key things I've found, and you'll hear me talk about keys, the key things that I've found and witnessed is that people are essential to driving your business. When you have a successful team, things seem to flow easily. When you have a high-performing team, they seem to be easily meeting targets. They're actually intrinsically engaged in the business and able to create that flow, which flows through to the bottom line because you're utilizing your resources as best possible you can. And these are people resources. These people come to your business and want to succeed. Nobody wants to fail in their job. They want to succeed. They just need someone to show them how. And so my passion has now become getting into businesses and helping them with their people so that they can succeed financially. If you're management, so that you can feel you're in control with ease, so that there's less conflict, better expectations are held. And today I want to start off on the right foot and break through the leadership noise. So before we start refining our leadership skills, what I'd like to do is go back to basics. And basics for me is what I have seen successful business after successful business do. And it's what I've created within these businesses. Now I'm talking 50 plus employees. No easy feat, mind you. But there are multiple businesses where I've been able to get in and create successful teams and a successful business because of this. And I've operated this in my own business with my own teams as well on this principle. Ready for the eye roll? Vision, mission, values. They are the absolute key to why people come to work to you. People come to work for you because your business says something. Ideally, there's a role and it stands out to them and they think, oh, I can fit here, I have the qualifications, but Why should I choose this business over another one? It's because of, I'm going to say, the vibe. The culture of the business stands out to them. When they meet you, they connect with you, and they want to know more, and they feel involved and invited into the business, and they feel that they can be a success there. If we've set up the interview correctly and we've given them the right vision for the role. That's another story, and we'll work on that later. But in the business, as an owner, as a manager, it is important to have a vision and a set of values and some measurables to be able to say, hey, yep, you know what? Here are the things that we need to succeed, because essentially everybody needs to be hitting their milestones and their performance indicators to be able to succeed. So what I want to get started on today is vision, mission, values. If you don't have them, start working on them. Get a mentor in if you need, get some advisors in if you need, bounce ideas off your friends. But that is the key foundation point for your business. As a senior leader in a business, if the business isn't great at that, don't think that you can't do this. You are able to now go have a look at the business visions and values. I've done this. I've taken what I've interpreted them as, which, you know, is along the lines of what they were, and I've said, right, let's implement this into my team. And so how do you implement those vision, mission, values? Lots of different ways. I was, firstly with my team, at a team level, I was able to actually say, you know what, here's what the company stands for. As a team, what are we trying to achieve? What do we stand for? Do we align with this? And then as a team, and I might be talking about the accounting department and saying, all right, as an accounting department, what do we stand for? How do we support the business? What's our purpose in this business? Each individual wants to feel that they belong and wants to understand their purpose in the business. Oh, great. I'm in the accounting team. I provide the finances. But dress it up a bit more and say, well, actually, your purpose is not only just to drive the finances, but you are an integral part in providing information that business owners and leaders need to make decisions on a daily basis. That is why your role is so important. That is a fact. Yeah? It is really important to feel important, but to feel that you have a purpose in the business, and that it's, oh, I'm just a data entry clerk. You are a data entry clerk. Here are your responsibilities, but here's your purpose, and here's where you fit into the vision of the business. Without you, our account manager wouldn't be able to, would have nothing to work with. They would have to be data entry. Without the account manager, the CFO wouldn't be able to provide the financial information as accurately as they do and as easily as they do, because they don't have the team supporting them reaching their goals and KPIs. And without the CFO, the finances of the business, no one can make decisions because they don't have accurate information. So you can see how the chain happens. So starting, everybody wants to work. These days it's all about purpose. Yes, people want a salary. Yes, people want, they may want, some flexibility. Nowadays it goes without saying, working from home, working remotely. But people want to work for a purpose-driven organisation. I want to know that my values align with my business values. That then creates less friction for me when I'm working, because our values align. I want to know that the vision that you have for the business is exciting for me, because, wow, we're going somewhere. And I can trust that that vision is being upheld because my management team and my business owner, my CEOs, they have credibility because I trust what they say. On repeat, every time they say something, they've backed it up by doing it. or they've given factual information that I completely understand. They're reliable because I trust what they do. They do what they say they're going to do. They follow through. I trust. And I feel comfortable discussing things with them because at times they can be vulnerable with me. At times they are sensational leaders. At times they're not, and they're open and honest about that. And I feel comfortable discussing these with them because I know it will be kept in confidence, and they are trustworthy people. We start to talk about self-orientation, but the motives of people, and I trust that my CEO or my manager cares about the vision and the mission and the values, and that they care about me, and that they care about what they're doing. That's huge. So that, in a nutshell, is trust. Credibility, reliability, intimacy, and self-orientation or self-awareness. They are the key leadership traits that your team will be looking for, that can only be provided on once you start doing what you say you're doing. If you've got this vision, mission, and values here, and you're working towards them in the things that you do, excellent. That is what your team is looking for. That is what they need. So that's basic step number one. There are quite a few basic steps. So that's the broader company vision. As I said, I encourage you, even if you're not the owner of the business, and even if they're not great at the vision, mission, and values, honestly, we don't mean to not be good at it. We just aren't quite sure how to get it going on a bigger scale. And that's okay. That's where you can get a mentor to come in. I've helped multiple businesses with implement these vision, mission, values throughout the organization. And it often starts with their policies and their processes, believe it or not. Their HR policies and processes. Whilst you might think they're standard, they're not. They can have your language in them. They can have, they can have your design, of course, they can have your design, but they can have your mission, vision, values in there. So that every time that someone's onboarded with the company, they can see what they are, and they should be able to feel that through the business. And that's what I've helped a lot of businesses achieve, and we'll get there in a moment as well. I'm jumping ahead here. So, getting back to basics, that bigger vision for people, and being a manager, by all means, if you don't have that bigger visions, look for it, find it, talk to your boss about it, talk to the owner about it if you're a smaller organization, talk about it. Let's get things moving, let's discuss it, step out of your comfort zone and start being a leader and implement these things within your team. As I mentioned before, you can create a vision within a vision for your team. You can have a vision for your accounts department. You can have a vision for your HR department. I've asked my management team to do that. Hey, what are the key things that you guys need to get done? How do you support the business? How do you see that you fit into the business? And where do you see yourself in the next year? And my teams have risen to the challenge and, come together collectively and being able to put that together. Now, what that does is that brings everybody together on the same page, and it creates clear expectations when there may not be any. So where are we headed for the next year? What are our goals for the next year as a team? And then break it down into individuals, but we'll get to that as well. So it's all about creating that united team, and here's where we're headed, and here's why. Here's my role in it, and let's do this. Come together with some enthusiasm. Now, I'm not talking about plaster these things all over the walls. I mean, do that if you are so inclined, because if that helps, then great. Fantastic. If you need to visually see it every day, fantastic. But it's more about just the little changes that we do and the little things that we do each day that add up to big change. Treat our customers as though we would want to be treated ourselves. So let me just double check here. I want to know where I've gone, if I'm still live, because I've had so many issues today. Excellent, so I'm still live, great. Sorry. All right. So creating a vision, defining each individual purpose within that vision, and I'm talking either on a company level, company delivering to teams, delivering to their teams, or whether you be a manager and want to just create that vision for your team. As I mentioned earlier, we're the accounts department and here's what we do. And start to build some of that engagement in letting people have a say in what they're doing. There's a lot of talk about how do I motivate my teams? You can't. You can't. Can you motivate yourself to get up and exercise? I can't. Not right now anyway. It's about discipline. Discipline gets you there. But if I'm not engaged in that, it's going to be a lot harder for me. So creating engagement is where you'll get success. But the first step, make sure the vision's clear. Make sure their purpose is clear. And then you'll see them come together. I'm going to talk about getting back to policies and processes. As I mentioned, it's really important as a manager, as a leader, as a business owner, that you have them in place. It's law. But make sure that they're you. Make sure that they stand for what the company's about. Don't let them be something that sits on a shelf and collects dust. These are the sorts of things that need to be invigorated in everything we do. So we want to be able to look at them, understand them, but we want to be able to live them, okay? When they're not clear, when they're not concise, there's no policy on them, we tend to make up our own rules, and then someone new will come in and they'll make up their own rules, and then you branch into state, and you have different states operating completely differently because we haven't had a clear and concise method of delivery of these policies and procedures. As a manager, get to know what they are. Get to understand what they are. These are the fundamental rules and guidelines sometimes of how to work within your business the right way. That's what they're there for. If you don't understand them, how can you lead your team through them? Understand these. Make sure that our teams are clear on them. So it's not and involved in them. Pick a policy, have a discussion about it, and make sure that your team understands what they do. If you're not clear on the policies, talk to your HR team. If you don't have a HR team, get someone in to explain it to you, because it really makes the world of difference when we know where the boundaries are in our organisation and we know what to do if there's an issue. That's what these policies outline. If I'm starting to have problems with my manager, or I'm starting to have problems with my peers, what do I do about it? Now, look, we're all humans, and we think we should be able to resolve these because we're people, and people should just get on about doing things without having to have these rules and boundaries. It doesn't work like that. Relationships don't work like that. And that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about employees. We're not talking about resources. We're talking about people. People come to work with their baggage from home, with their baggage from, past experience in workplaces. They come to work with their baggage from a lot of things in there that you cannot possibly be aware of when they are hired. You can only gauge what you see in an interview based generally on skills and generally on their personality when you see them. So, understanding that people have different lenses and see things completely differently based on their backpacks full of, past experience. Being clear about where the boundaries are, being clear about the rules and what goes on in a business, being clear about living those visions becomes essential, because everybody's boundaries personally are different. So how do I create clear expectations with someone? When they're in my team, I actually go through policies and procedures with them. I need to understand them myself first, though. So I, need to understand, okay, what's the company's stance on this? There may not be a policy in a smaller organization. You may not have a recruiting policy. You may not have a pay performance policy, but it's definitely something worth discussing, because if everybody's doing something in a similar way, then the expectations are clear. The expectations are clear from the start. Doesn't mean you have to 100% be on that line and do everything to the dot. It's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is having those in place, understanding what they are, so that people generally can follow the rule. But they know what's expected. They know what's expected when the pay review time comes around. They know what's expected when the annual performance review comes around. They know what's expected. And it's all about creating one vision and expectations aligned with that. So that's what these policies are there to do. I know the most boring topic in the world, policies and procedures and templates but why are they there? They're there for a good purpose. It's not meant to be, all right, here's your performance improvement plan because you're not working. Yes, that is a support for people when they're struggling with how to perform. But they're there for a reason. It's to support you as managers. It's to support you as a business. Create uniform expectations. It doesn't mean that I can't, as a manager, say, well, look, I know this is the pay performance, but hey, can I do this for this team? Because can I create an exception? Because an exception to a rule is fabulous. It gives you that flexibility to say, you know what, you've above and beyond any expectation. Here's how we'd like to reward you. But having the policy there to be able to say, hey, here are the general rules. Here's the exception to the rule. Fantastic, and I think that takes a lot of stress off managers. That takes a lot of stress off business owners by having these sorts of things in place. Not just the behavioural ones. They are really important. Here's what we do and don't do at work. They are really important. And actually, by law, you need them, so make sure that you have them. But having other policies like, here's how we perform our performance reviews. Here's how we complete our annual pay reviews. So when it comes up to the time, this is what you expect. As a manager, understanding what they are is key. If you don't have them, talk to your manager, business owner, HR department. If you don't have a HR department, there are people out there that, like myself, that come in and help sort all that stuff out. But talk to someone, because understanding the expectations of a business on that policy level is key to being able to deliver those expectations to your team. And it's the fundamental expectations. This is the first form of trust that you form with your team. Okay, this is them seeing you, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about. He has this all set up. Wow, there's rules, guidelines, I know what to expect. Get your employee to take the time to go through them. Don't just shoot it through and get them to sign off on it. Take them through it. Managers, leaders, it is important that you're involved in this process. You being involved in this process sets the expectation that they need to follow the rules and regulations of the business, or the guidelines of the business. It is the first level of engagement that you have with them, setting the boundaries. Now, it sounds really rigid when I say, here are the rules and regulations, but you know what? It's really important, especially for young workers who've never worked somewhere before, especially for workers who've worked somewhere. People that have worked somewhere that have had a really poor experience come to work with that fear in there as well. You don't know their background. You don't know how you don't understand You may not understand their background. So having someone come in, and I've had this happen before. I've had a team member where they've come in and have had such a poor experience where they were so timid to even speak up. They didn't know what the rules in general were. They didn't understand, how performance reviews were conducted. They were pretty much sort of thought they had to sit there and take it. But then, because I hadn't explained how things work and how involved I would be in the process and supporting them through this at the start, what happened was, when I tried to engage them about their performance and increase their performance, they shrunk back and said, here's my job description. This is all I do. Wow, okay. But why aren't you here for the team, Because I've had such a poor experience in the back of their head. I've had such a poor experience with my previous managers. I don't want to step out of this box. I know that this is what I do. This is all I'm going to do. Because they came from a different background. They've got a different lens. They've got this different experience that we don't have and may not see. So get involved with them right from the start. Don't let HR do it on their own. I know it's a time-consuming process, especially when you've got big teams. Leaders need to be involved from the outset of setting the expectations and earning trust, and it starts with understanding these policies and procedures, and it starts with, hey, here's our stance on sexual harassment, here's our stance on bullying, here's how we handle it. If you ever come across someone and you feel you're being bullied, here's how it happens. We don't want these things to be hidden in the background, and when they do happen we go, well, here's how we deal with it. Or we don't want them to have been thrown this 105-page manual. Go and read it on your own. They're not going to. They are not going to read the manual on their own. Did you? No. You're going to now, though. But understanding those, as I said, people who have a HR department have help in this space. Yeah. They have people who can come in and help with that. But as I said, I encourage you deeply to get on board with this, because this is as I said, it's your first interaction with them. When people come on board, they're blank slates to the business, and they've seen what they've seen at the interview, which often is painted quite well, because we want you here. And they've come in all excited to be starting a new job, and your first interaction with them is to, hey, let's get on top of our guidelines. Let's make you feel safe at work. Here's how we handle information. Here's how we handle if bullying comes up. Here's how we handle it. Please feel like you can come and reach out to me. I want to be able to take it with you and work with you on that. Here's how we handle performance reviews. Here's how we handle, here's our stance on drugs and alcohol. And make it yours. If you have some HR presentations, great. Have HR be involved, but be there as well. It can be challenging when you've got multiple people in your team. It can be challenging for business owners, but business owners, I challenge you to get your senior management team to understand this as well. All right, policies and procedures, yay! They do have a purpose, and they do work. It works every single time. Clear vision for the business, mission, values, understand what your values are. Bring people in, create your first trust experience by leading by example and getting those policies and procedures and interacting with them on that. Ask them questions. Do you have any questions? How does this sit with you? Get them involved in it, get them engaged in the conversation process. That is how I would encourage you to start to create your high-performing team. As I mentioned, boundaries are important, and these guidelines are boundaries, but there's also how-tos in there. How do I access someone if, I'm being bullied? Here's what we do. You need to be across these as well. I think it's really important. I think the most successful businesses I've seen, you don't need to be the expert in them. That's what your HR team is for. But you do need to have if you don't have a HR team, a mentor, a HR mentor, a HR advisor, someone that can come in and step in and help your management team when they need it. Managers, it's important that you get across this as much as you can. I'm not asking you to be an expert, just get across the basics so that you can explain it to your team, so that you can be involved with them to create your first trust experience with them, and start following what you do. Another thing that we're talking about, basics, and breaking through the leadership training. Leadership training will focus a lot on trust, and we will get into that. We will absolutely get into that. As mentioned, creating that first trust interaction with you is about the foundation of the business, the vision, mission, values, all that sort of stuff. That is your first chance at getting this all happening. If you've got an existing team, don't think you can't implement this. This is amazing. You can implement it. It will make the world of difference. But also checking in with them on their position description regularly is another thing that's really important. Make sure that you're checking in and saying, I'll start off when someone starts. Have you ever started a job and then gotten in there and gone, holy crap, this is not what I expected? Hands up. Yeah, me. And then as an employee, you're absolutely scrambling to try and make it work. Oh, I don't quite understand this. And there's a grace period, that's what we call probation. It's our grace period to get on board and find our feet. It's not easy. I was painted a picture here and now I'm here. So, check it when you've onboarded someone, check in with them regularly. How is it still what you expected? How can what are we missing? Don't always be about them. Don't always be about here's what you need to improve. Don't get me wrong, that is a conversation that needs to happen, but they're new. Give them some guidance. You're doing really well over here. We need to work on this area over here. How can I support you more? There's nothing more important than a manager stepping in and saying, am I doing okay? Where do I need to support you more? Because what you're doing, again, is building that trust. You're absolutely creating a connection that makes them feel comfortable in coming to you about things. I worked with a beautiful lady many, many years ago who lived on the other side, if you know in Melbourne, the Westgate Bridge. Oh, it is deadlock in the morning. Some mornings it takes hours and hours to get to work from that side of the world. And she said to me, I need to work from home a couple of days a week. Is that okay? And we said, yeah, you know what, let's make that happen. And well and truly before where we are now, it was, 6 years ago. Wow, 8 years ago now I think about it. But anyway, a long time ago. And so we said, let's do this. You'd rather you spend some time being a bit more relaxed at home doing the work. I had quite a good relationship with her. I had talked a lot about her position and what the expectations were in her position. We retouched on her position description quite a lot and said, yes, you have a line management position. You need to be managing a team. Face-to-face is better, but let's make it work. I set the expectations. You need to be available on the phone at any given point in time during the day. And if I can't get you, you need to come back to me straight away, and your team needs to be able to get you. We hadn't quite instigated the video conferencing or video chat at this point. And over time, actually it wasn't long before I'd said, and she'd been there longer than me, I was her new manager, and she'd said to me, I actually found that I couldn't get a hold of her, but not only that, I couldn't get a hold of her and her work was slipping. And I thought, hang on a minute, this is really unlike you. Why? I had spent the time building trust with her. I'd spent the time going over these processes with her. I'd set up the expectations of the working environment. And we started to talk about it, and I said, what's going on? Are you okay at home? And it turned out she actually wasn't okay at home. And I found out that she was, having issues with her husband, and there was starting the the process of divorce. And I said, okay, well, you know what? Home's not going to be a great space for you to work then, is it? And I'm sorry, maybe we could shift your hours about a bit, but you're probably going to need to come into the office because you're going to get a bit more done. I'm going to give you some time off, have a few days off, and then how would you feel about that? And that worked for her. But what I'd done is already set up the expectations of understanding what her position was and being clear about that. I checked in with her to make sure she was able to achieve what the expectations that we'd set out, and then I called her on it. And I was able to do that because I was extremely clear from the start, and I developed that I'm not going to let things slide, trust, and those expectations. So by doing all of that, by absolutely delivering, our mission, purpose, and then going down into the level of her position description, here are the expectations of your role, how are you finding it? She was able to actually trust that I'm going to do what I say I do. I gave her, I supported her in what she needed to do, but because I was supporting her in what she needed to do, she was able to actually be honest and open up with me and say, this is actually what's going on. So we created a new plan. It worked a lot better than when I had my team member who had such a terrible background in previous workplaces that I couldn't actually gain any performance with. Performance started to drop, and I couldn't even manage that situation because I hadn't set the expectations from the outset. Really hard to work in that space and manage the expectations there. So setting clear expectations and working with someone's position description to make sure that they're still doing what they say in there. Hey, this is what you're doing. Even if it's just at a high level, here are the top 4 things that I'm expecting that are your key result areas. How are we going in there? We talked about performance review briefly, but having these regular conversations on performance also, leads to, when we have our performance appraisal, this person knows where they stand. Yeah, because you've been talking to them the whole time you've been checking in with them. Be it within their probation period, when it comes to the time to say, it's actually not working, I've checked in all the time. How can I support you? Where are we going? How are you going? We need to work on this. We need to work. You're doing really well in this space, but you need to work a bit more on this. We need to develop this area a bit. Having done that, at the time of the end of probation, it was almost like we both just went, sorry, it's not really working out, is it? And it's a much easier conversation than not having any conversation with them about their performance along the way, and then you get to the end and there's an expectation of, well, I must be doing well because nothing's been said. Hang on a minute. Nothing's been said, but we're not working out. Well, that becomes a bit tense, and you can see how conflict can get caused or get created when we haven't set the expectation and we haven't been trustworthy in giving our honest feedback. That was a lot. I hope you got a lot out of this session. I'm going to break down these into individual topics later throughout the weeks, not this week, goodness. So, my goal is to get little bits of information. This was a huge training session, so thank you. But I will go into them in a bit more detail in future trainings. I hope you enjoyed the session. #replay if you'd like to see it, but well done for getting through it. I'm super passionate about this. I know you're going to fly. Get back to basics, break through the leadership training noise. The first step to trust is setting expectations, whether that be vision, big picture. That's where it starts, big picture, and then their individual circumstance. Big picture, team, individual. Fabulous. Have a fabulous Thursday, people, and hopefully I'll see you again next week. Enjoy your day.